What's going on, y'all? Today's discussion is going to be strictly about the pawns. For all the beginners who are just learning how to play chess or might have a question about the pawn, how much it's worth, what can it do, how valuable it is in chess. Well, I'm going to show you all of that right now. So, on the very first move, this happens on the very first move only. The pawn can move twice, right? So now, after that, the pawn can only move once. So now, let's say, because you're gonna run into all type of scenarios. So let's say, for example, your opponent goes e5, playing the opening, which can transpose to many things. So you see how the pawns are blocked? It's barricaded like it's one in front of it. Now, in order for this pawn to get over here, because the pawn can move diagonally, right? So the pawn kind of moves it's like a baby bishop. If there's something beside it, the pawn can move. So, for example, I'm going to show you. So we'll go f4. So now, because it's diagonal, how it works in chess, this pawn, the black pawn, has the ability to take the pawn on f4 because that's the rules of the pawn. Now, we got that. Now, after that, like I said, the pawn can move one time, and if it moves one time, it can't go to the third square. This ain't checkers. It only can move one more time, right? So now, one other issue that people have a problem with is a thing called en passant, and I really don't know how to explain it, but I'm gonna try to make it make sense. So let's say, for example, the scenario is you got a pawn. Let's say your pawn's on e5, right? So now your opponent moves the pawn to d4. To d5, excuse me. Now that's called en passant. And like I said, I guess en passant is when it passes it twice. Nevertheless, you have the ability to take the pawn. So I'm gonna show y'all one more time for people who kind of new to chess. So let's say if your pawn, theoretically speaking, move all the way up to e5 and your person did d5. You have the ability, if you want, based off a strategy in your head, to take that pawn or not. Pawns are also, they're only worth 1 point. 1 point. So now people would say, well, if it's worth 1 point, like what's what's the point of a pawn? Well, the pawn, the whole object of the game is to capture the king, right? The pawn provides protection for the king. All the pieces do, but the pawn is the main piece that's always around the king. And chess is it's like being in the military. It's like being the general of an army. Like, say, for example, right, if I fianchetto my bishop, which means is when I push a pawn on one, I put the bishop there, now the bishop's gone. Called fianchetto. I'm not sure if I'm saying it right. If I'm mispronouncing it, I apologize. But nevertheless, the king can go up here. Now, I can do something like this, right, and just move the king again, and eventually the pawns can walk the king down. So the pawns, they do serve a purpose. Now, the other cool thing about the pawns is, so see how this is called a knight, a horse. It's worth 3 points, right? I'll get into all the pieces later, but for now, I'm just going to show y'all like how the pawns can work with all the pieces. So as long as it's diagonal from the pawn is protecting this knight, and it goes the same thing with the bishop. The rook, the queen, so forth and so forth, so on and so forth. So now, even though the pawn is weak, one of its strongest abilities is this. Now, for example, if the pawn can reach the 8th rank, which means it gets all the way down to the opponent's side, it gets all the way down, show y'all at a different angle. If it gets all the way down here, that person has the ability to take this take this pawn and sub it for any piece they want to. I don't know if y'all caught that or not, but I was getting ready to say queen because that's 99% of the time is what most people are going to do. So it's basically like, I don't know if y'all ever watched this show called Yu-Gi-Oh, where they had the Monster Reborn card, and like you play Monster Reborn, you can bring back any card from the graveyard. Well, it's kind of similar to this because when a pawn gets down here, you can make it turn into any piece, you know. So, but anyway, that's how the pawns work. I'll be doing some more videos. I'm gonna do one for the knight, the bishop, the queen, the king in a way, the rook, and y'all just stay tuned, man. Thank y'all.